start that question over a little bit. Welcome, everyone. We gathered with a prayer, and so thank you. We won't have the prayer on recording, but we just started the recording, so you're a little late. But the question was really profound. It was a great question. We have a young student here. What your name? Abby, right? Abby, she's studying anthropology, and she asked, well, how do you fit all this anthropology stuff in from the secular university to our Catholic faith? And I was explaining about 150 years ago, there was a movement among intellectuals that basically it was more proper to say, well, God really doesn't exist. So you have a lot of intelligent people, supposedly intelligent, that don't believe in God anymore. So they built their sciences in trying to leave God totally out of the equation. And I may mention that the church was addressing this whole thing with Darwin by a document called Humani Generis. And in that document, it talks about how Catholics can believe that God used evolution as the means and the process of bringing about humanity to where we're at today. But you have to believe at some point that no longer is this person an ape, but now it's a human being with a human soul. So God supernaturally intervenes in human history and places a human soul in our first parents.
But don't we believe that there was no death before sin, so therefore this evolution thing couldn't have happened?
Well, I mean, not necessarily. I don't see how that would be a problem because animals don't suffer the original sin. I mean, they have some sense.
There was no death. Like we had dominion over the earth. There was no death in the whole earth until sin.
Well, there was no death for humanity. I mean, so we know the scriptures are clear enough to say that certainly death was the wages of sin, and it was that death that indeed was the result, and actually our God's salvation that we get rid of our sinful body and get it transformed into a glorified body. But okay, so all that scientific stuff. So what I'm saying is you can be a Catholic and believe in evolution. You can also be a good Catholic and say, you know what? I don't buy that evolution. I think God created in 7 days. God can do anything he wants. So in other words, you're free to believe that God did it, just like chapters 1 and chapter 2 of Genesis says. We're going to be talking about it in some of the slides today in salvation history, so I don't want to get too off track because we can get beyond that in a little bit. But the idea is, here's the deal. Science addresses the question how things work, all right? Theology and faith tell us why they work, all right? The reason why we're here is because God created us. And I've told many people this many times. There's only one thing I know that takes more faith than believing in God, and that's not believing in God, okay? Just take a 10-piece puzzle, throw it up in the air 1,000 times. How many times are going to land in perfect order? It's not going to happen. And yet we're infinitely more complex than a 10-piece puzzle. And to think that we somehow just randomly fall into place, if anybody believes that, they have a lot more faith than I do. It just doesn't make sense. From a scientific perspective, I'd love to talk to atheists because they don't, when you push them back far, I love these shows on like History Channel, Ancient Aliens, right? They're trying to say, well, these ancient aliens came and seeded our planet, and that's why our DNA is so different. Who made the aliens? Okay, where did they come from? I mean, maybe that's the way God chose to change our DNA. I don't believe that for a second, but I'm just saying God could have done that. I don't think he did it that way. But what I'm saying is the beautiful thing about God is that he loves us and that he makes his presence very real to us in the sacraments, okay? So, and tonight we're talking about salvation history, and we started Genesis. So we're going to be touching on some of these things. So don't hesitate if you have questions, okay? Because I love questions. Does that make any sense? Did that help at all? Okay. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Okay, let's see. Okay, I think I need to touch that. There we go. Okay, so what's really interesting, Josephus, he was a first century Jewish historian. He lived 2,000 years ago. And he said, he said this 2,000 years ago. He said the first chapter of Genesis is a philosophical account of creation. He said that 2,000 years ago. So do you remember how Genesis begins? Does everybody have a Bible? Do you guys have okay. Before we leave, at the end,
neither of them have one.
I have a whole case of them. I haven't brought them over here. So wait here after class and I'll go back and bring you some, okay? Because I've been meaning to bring that over. And so just you can go back and read Genesis and all these different things. Okay. So if you open up the Bible, the very first sentence in the Bible was in the beginning. Okay. There was the earth, or the world was formless and void. So there was no form and it was empty. So there was nothing. In the beginning of our humanity, the beginning of this time-spatial domain, there was nothing. And then Scott Hahn and Jeff Cavins have this great series. Now this is old, they might have it on a new name, but it was called My Father's Plan originally. Now they might call it something else. But it talks about a framework and how God has revealed himself to us through covenants. Does anybody know what a covenant is? So, let's see, it's Josh. If you have a question, just start waving your hands because they'll be seeing you on the screen. If I'm not looking at you, they can say, hey, Josh has a question, okay? Got it?
Yeah.
All right. So covenants. What is a covenant? When you think of a covenant, what do you think of a covenant?
Agreement.
An agreement? Marriage is a covenant. So what's the difference between a covenant and a contract?
Contract is.
What's that, Steve?
Contract with God.
Sort of. But you can make a covenant with people too. You know, like marriage is a covenant, so God's part of that, but.
Well, I think a contract would be more like a verbal agreement, where a covenant would be more of a relationship kind of issue.
Relationship is key. Okay, so say you're getting some guy to paint your room. You say, I'll give you $400 to paint my bedroom. Okay? He could be a real snake. He could be like, not a very nice man. But if he does a good job, who cares, right? If he does a good job, it's clean, he doesn't hurt anybody, it's safe. He might curse like a sailor, which might not want your kids to hear that. That's okay. But nonetheless, if you say, here's $400, you paint the room, he paints the room, you give him $400, it's done. You don't have to worry about that guy around your kids, nothing. After he's done, he's gone. But a covenant is a relationship. God doesn't say, it's not like a quid pro quo agreement. A contract is a quid pro quo. It's a this for that, okay? A covenant implies a love relationship. God does not say, I challenge anybody to find in the Bible where God says, you do this, 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 and this, or you're going to hell. God doesn't say that. God says, you do this, 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 and this, and you will be my people, and I will be your God. In other words, I'll look out for you. There's this amazing statistic. Over the last 3 years, there's been a precipitous drop in young people believing in God. And there's also been a precipitous incline, or not precipitous, but I mean a radical incline of suicide rates among young people. Because when you don't believe God's got your back and things aren't going right, it's very easy to despair. Because we know it all turns out in the end. God wins. Okay, we know how this game's gonna end up. And yeah, we've read the book. We know the ending. Okay. Now, when we really believe that, it changes everything. It gives us the capacity to have faith and trust, and then it actually transforms suffering. But so God is a God of covenants. And so covenants are distinct from contract. Contracts are quid pro quo, this for that. Covenants imply a relationship, a love relationship. In Hebrew, there's a significance to 7 as well. 7 days, it's a complete time frame. It's completeness. Like when you would make an oath in Hebrew, they have a lot less words in Hebrew, so they don't have a word for angry. When they're talking about God's angry, it says God's nose is red. Like you see a little baby, they get really mad, their face gets beet red, right? So their nose is red. They're angry because their nose is red. Okay, so they use these idioms. And so an oath was, they seven myself. That was an oath. That's the way they would take an oath. Or they would grab their thigh. The implication is, that's your progeny. you know, you have life, it goes on. And so it's like, I'm swearing on my progeny when you grab your thigh. So it's the language is a very interesting thing. Okay, so in this framework, all we can do is kind of have a framework. We can never completely understand everything. There's always something more to learn. But I really find this framework really helpful. So one can divide salvation history into 12 periods and 7 covenants. God comes to us. He deals with stuff, matter, the sacraments. Stuff matters, okay? God reaches into our world and he touches us. He's not a distant God. That's why he became one of us. So, all right, there's 2 stories in creation, and this is really interesting. In the first chapter of Genesis, the story reveals God's relationship with everything, the whole created order. The second chapter of Genesis is talking about God's relationship with us, the human family, okay? So this is interesting. I wonder if I can move this thing. Do you see that green thing here? Let's see here. There we go. That's better. I'm not a Zoom aficionado, really. All right. Where is that? Okay, so going back to Genesis, day 1, remember, what was it? It was formless. So God brings form. And so day 1, let there be light. Light and darkness are separated. So he brings form in light and darkness. Day 2, he then gives form to the fluids, the air and the sea. Now, I really like this from an engineering perspective because it's the same equation. Submarines really fly underwater. So air is a fluid and water is a fluid. It's just the density is way different. So it's when the Bible says he separated the fluids, that is very true because air is a fluid. Kind of cool from an engineering perspective. Anyway, I was an engineer before I was a priest. I have a master of mechanical engineering. So day 3, he gives form to the earth. So now he separates the vegetation and the earth, okay, and gathers the water into a basin. So he brings the earth, vegetation together. He brings form to all that stuff. Okay. Now that's the first 3 days. So what does he do on day 4? He fills the light and the darkness. Okay. So what does he fill it with? The creatures of light. The stars, the moon, the sun, and I would argue that's when he made the angels, because the angels are creatures of light, okay? So he made the angels on day 4. And then day 5, he fills the fluids, right? The birds and the fish. And it's day 6 that he creates the animals. And the highest order of these animals is man. But the difference between man is that we actually are not just created in the image of God, but we are created in the image and likeness of God. I love dogs. It's really cool. But dogs can't do calculus, all right? They can love you in a certain way. They can kind of be happy to see you, but they're not going to help you with your math problem, all right? Now, also, the thing is that's interesting, gorillas have even a certain level of vocabulary. But the difference is that we as human beings are conscious that we're conscious, okay? That's what, like gorillas can see a banana and then hit a card that says banana, okay? And sees a plum and can hit a picture that says plum. So it has like a vocabulary, but it can't make sentences. It can't do grammar, Okay. So and this is Spitzer's book. I love Father Spitzer. It's The Soul's Upward Yearning. It's just a great, great book. Okay. So this is how God created. So Genesis chapter 1 is God's relationship with all of the created order. Now, since I touched all this stuff, I got to make sure I'm on the PowerPoint slide or it's not going to. Okay. So now chapter 2, God's plan for the human person. Adam, literally the Hebrew, that just means earth. Okay? That's the name Adam. It means earth. So Adam was created, getting to your point earlier, in original innocence. And John Paul II also noted that he was created with original solitude. God made all the animals for Adam. They didn't quite do it for him.
I got a question.
Yes.
What's solitude?
Solitude means totally by himself.
So you made
Adam was made first. Eve was not made yet. God created Adam, then he created all the animals, and he was lonely. He didn't, he said, man, these are nice, these pets and things, but, it's nice, but this is my little joke, but, he's put into a sleep, and then God takes the bone from his side, flesh of my flesh, and then, I don't know, he said, whoa, man, woman, I don't know, sorry, it's kind of a joke, but this original solitude was pierced by that relationship with Eve. So God's intent is for man and woman to be together, all right? If there was no sin in the world, I'd be out of a job, and I certainly wouldn't be celibate, okay? But because of sin in the world, I'm called to live as though I'm already in heaven, without a woman, because in heaven we won't be married. Jesus says that. That doesn't mean we won't have great relationships, and we won't, if I can't, my mother, she said to my father, I think, my parents were very religious, and my mother said something to the effect, she'll be a little upset if my dad wouldn't at least wink at her in heaven, so.
Your dad what?
Wouldn't at least wink at her in heaven, so. I'm sure they will. I mean, I'm confident of that. I really do believe that with my heart of hearts, that we just have this pure relationship that will be just so wonderful. No misunderstanding, no darkness, no sin, no hatred. It's just good. And so God created them. And this original solitude is pierced by a community of persons, the family. In fact, the image of the Trinity itself can be imaged by the family, a relationship of love. A community of persons united in mutual and unlimited love. Okay, so that's why John Paul II talks about this in Familiaris Consortio, where the community of the family. So it's just a beautiful thing where God intends this man and woman, and if they're blessed with children, to have these children, so that those relationships of love image God's own community of persons in the mystery of the Trinity. Okay. So the first covenant, remember I said 7 covenants. The first covenant is marriage, okay? And what does it do? It unites one man and one woman. Adam was told, this is interesting. This is kind of cool. Eve was not created yet, okay? So God told Adam, hey, don't eat of the tree of good and evil. Eve wasn't made yet. Eve was obviously in the know, though, okay? So it's not like when she ate the apple, she said, nobody told me. She didn't say that. She knew that she wasn't supposed to eat that tree. She knew she wasn't supposed to eat it, but she had to know by the word of another person. So already tradition is being established that we need to trust the word of another if we're going to understand God's plan for us. It's kind of cool, actually. So this is like, so then Genesis 3:15. Have you seen the movie Mel Gibson and the Passion? It's a very brutal movie of the Passion. Have you seen it? Have you guys seen that? The Passion by Mel Gibson? Yeah.
And we are going to show it to them.
Yeah, it's very,
Yes, it's very,
very graphic. But do you remember the opening scene? where Jesus is out there praying, one of the opening scenes, and the snake slithers out, and then Jesus stands up and crushes the snake with his heel. Do you know where that comes from? Genesis chapter 3:15. It says, I will put enmity between you and the woman. He will bruise your head, and he or she will crush your head. He will bruise your heel, and he or she will crush your head. That's a mistake. That should say heel. Okay, and there's a way, it depends on the translation, but he will strike at your heel, but he or she will crush his head. Now, when I say he or she, if you look at the Dewey Reams translation, the old Catholic translation, it says he will strike at her heel and she will crush her head, talking about Mary. Okay. If you look at a New Modern Translation, he said you will strike his heel and he will crush your head. Okay. So if you look at a Protestant Bible, it says he and he, or his heel and he will crush. In the old Dewey Reams, it's her heel and crush her head. So I taught this Old Testament class at Ancilla College, and they send me books. You know, whenever you're a teacher, they give you these books so that you'll buy them for your class, so that they make a gazillion dollars if you buy 40 textbooks, you know, so that's because they're like 6 times the price of a normal book, you know. But this was the Hebrew translation of the Old Testament. So I said, I wonder how they translate this. I go to it, you know. It says, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and you will strike at their heels, and they will crush your head.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
He, she, and they.
Yeah. So because there's no way, you don't know which one it means. It can mean either one. Both are accurate translations. So they couldn't decide, so they just included them both.
What's enmity?
Anger, frustration, like animosity, you know, mistrust, suspicion. I mean, that's what it means to me. Look it up. See what they say.
I don't know if it meant like a hate.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much. A state of feeling or being actively opposed or hostile to someone or something. So, great. Okay, so in Mel Gibson's The Passion, I told you that. This is called the proto-gospel, because you see right here that God is already sending their deliverer, and he foreshadows that in the 3rd chapter of Genesis. It's really cool. Okay. So, and then also in that movie, the devil is stalking Jesus, holding a strange offspring, this little like ugly kid or whatever. And again, it's kind of an allusion back to that. I'll put enmity between you or your offspring and hers, or, you know, so. Yes.
In Revelation, obviously there was nobody there to record Revelation. So as opposed to like the Gospels of Luke and Matthew.
When you say Revelation, what do you mean? You mean the last book of the Bible,
or in Genesis, I meant, there was nobody actually there to like record, whereas later in the Bible, when we had the prophets.
Right.
And so what do you call the Genesis version, or the Genesis part of the Bible?
Okay. The first 11 chapters of Genesis, we call that a historical etiology. Okay. So in other words, that just means it's a story rooted in truth. But we don't have to, as Catholics, take that as a video camera portrayal of what God did or how he did it. But we as Catholics believe that God did it. He created us, and they're our first parents. So when I would teach Old Testament, I would have biblical fundamentalists in that class. I would have atheists in that class. I would have Catholics in that class. And so, you know, when I would talk about this in Genesis, I would tell a little joke. Okay. So like this lovely evangelical Protestant who has a very straightforward, literal biblical faith. Well, first I'll start with the scholar. Because you can go to biblical scholars and they just think this is all like mythical. They just say, oh, this really didn't happen, And that's not a historical etiology. His historical etiology says something happened. It may not be exactly like Adam's real name might not have been Earth. Could have been something else. But there was a first parent. There was a first Eve. Adam and Eve were real people. God created Adam. He created Eve. But not necessarily as a video camera portrayal of what the Bible relates. So, but scholars will say, oh, this is just a mythical thing. And so the biblical scholar, if he makes it to heaven, okay, he's up in heaven. And this guy comes up to him, he says, hey man, how you doing? He says, hello, how you doing? He says, hello, I'm Adam. Adam, you're a myth. He said, no, you got it all wrong. It happened just like it says in chapter 2. So then the biblical fundamentalist goes to heaven. And he's looking all over heaven, and he can't find Adam. He can't find Eve. And he's like, what's going on, man? I mean, I this was my battle, I got kicked out of school. I failed classes, and so guy touches on the shoulder, and he says, hello. He says, hello, what's your name? He says, my name is Abuchiga. He says, Abuchiga. Well, who's Abuchiga? He says, well, you don't know my name, but you would know me as Adam. I'm the guy that God infused a human soul into in the evolutionary process. And this is my wife, Abuchigi. So in other words, we don't know. And it's not worth going to war over this. I believe that God created Adam and Eve. Now their names may not have been Adam and Eve, but God created our first parents. And that's what you have to believe as a Catholic. Okay, that God is behind this. He created our first parents. How he did it is an open question.
I got a trick question about Eve for you. Well, Eve means beginning, right?
Yep.
So then why is the evening at the end of the day?
It's not. The Jewish people believe the day begins at the evening.
Right.
That's why Saturday night mass is the beginning of Sunday. So Eve is actually the beginning of the day. That's why Saturday night mass counts. Yeah, so Eve is actually beginning. And that's for the Jews, the new day began at sunset. Great. Okay, so the 12 periods, the history of the early world, the covenant with Adam and Eve, the family, right, starts there. Then the covenant with Noah. Now it's not just one family, but it's several families. And then the patriarchs. God makes a covenant with Abram, whose name becomes Abraham. Now it's just not a few families, it's an entire tribe. So you see God's plan. It's expanding. Starts with a man and a woman, then it goes with a couple families, then a tribe, then it goes all the whole tribe, and then he makes a covenant with Moses, which is a whole grouping of tribes, an entire nation. And then they conquer the promised land. Okay. And this period of the 12 periods continued. They have the judges, the United Kingdom, the divided kingdom, the exile, return, Maccabean revolt, Jesus and the Messiah, church, covenant. Okay. No, did I miss something on this slide? Because I wonder if that slide cut something off. Because, okay, so you have the covenant with Moses, and then after Moses, God enters into, so this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is David. So now it's not just one nation, but now it includes all the nations. So he unites all the nations under this dominance. So it's a kingdom, not just a grouping of tribes, but now it's just not one nation, but it's several nations into a kingdom. Okay, and then Christ comes and he unites all the kingdoms of the earth. So now all of humanity and earth are united. Now, if you're doing your counting, that's 6. There's 7. When Christ comes back, he's going to unite heaven and earth and complete everything and bring it all together. So now back to these 12 periods, you have the period of judges, okay? Then you have the United Kingdom with David, and then the divided kingdom after Solomon. Then you have the exile, the return, the Maccabean revolt, and then Jesus is the Messiah. and then the church. The covenant with Jesus is now the whole world. David brought it to an entire kingdom, but Jesus now brings all the kingdoms of the earth under the banner of his reign. The Exodus event is really important for Catholics, okay, because it foreshadows God's plan. Moses led the people from the cruel oppression of slavery. The final plague, you remember what the final plague was? The death, right? The last born. So how were they saved? Do you remember how they were saved? They took the blood of the lamb and put it on the doorpost, probably on the inside of the doorpost, so that from the outside nobody see, but God could see what was on the inside of our hearts. Okay, so they put the blood on there, and the blood of an unblemished male lamb. And I think this says something to the mystery of the male priesthood too. Okay, because the priest, his life is to be offering sacrifice. Why would they sacrifice a male lamb? Any ideas why it had to be a man?
Probably to symbolize Jesus. Well, the male is usually considered more valuable.
No, actually not.
Well, the male humans are. The male lambs wouldn't be because you can't breed with them.
That's right. I mean, you can, but you get one lamb out of one man. You got a girl lamb, you get a lot more lambs out of that girl lamb. Okay. So in other words, men are more expendable. Men are more expendable. You know, and I don't think there's a temptation. We have different roles. Men and women are different. I mean, we have the same soul, there's equality, but man, there's just differences, more than just biological differences. The way you process information, the way you think, and one is not better than the other. They both have gifts. And that's why it's interesting, when God created Eve, he didn't take from the head. He didn't take from the foot. He took from the side, which is a great symbol of equality. Okay? So not to say that one is superior or below, but he took the rib from the side. So it really is beautiful in this. And there's a complementarity between a man and a woman that is so important. And the difficulty is, in the world, they want to sit there and say that men and women are there's no difference. And in dignity, there's no difference. But I'm just telling you, women are going to be a lot happier doing some things than men. Okay, I'm just saying, generally speaking. Now, there could be exceptions to this, but my sisters love to shop. I hate it with a perfect hate. I mean, it's like, I'm going to go out there and get what I need to do and be done with this thing. You know? So, and
Do you know why they try to teach us that men and women are the same? I do.
well, they're trying to destroy the family, I think.
That's a large part of it, yes. It's not wrong. But the other thing is, if you look at the story of Babel, the Tower of Babel, the first thing the king said, before he said, let's make a tower, he said, let's make a bunch of bricks. And the reason why he wanted to make a bunch of bricks instead of build it with stone, which was the normal way at the time, is because bricks are all the same. And you can, if you don't like one doesn't work for you, you just throw it to the side and grab a different one. And likewise, if you look at any of this demonic direction that they're trying to go in, they try to make people bricks.
Oh, absolutely.
They try to make us like men and women are the same. Well, no, we're not. Let me see a male give birth. Give birth. You know, like we're not the same. We're not the same physically. We're not the same.
Well, and you know, right. I mean,
because God made us different.
and
we're supposed to highlight and encourage those differences, not, you know, like the fact that men need to earn more money. God designed us to earn more money because he wants us going out there.
there's some women that make more money than men. I mean, I think,
But, yeah, there are.
you know, so it just depends on what
Like if you
the
look at
circumstances.
averages,
Sure,
men
but
earn more
the
because
idea,
God made us.
the idea
And it
is,
doesn't take from women.
right, no. But the idea is this complementarity. I mean, it really is
Right.
super important to understand that God makes us different and we have something to offer. And for example, in a woman, where she processes emotions in her brain, it's the size of a silver dollar, okay? In a man, size of a dime, okay? All right? Now, I'm just saying that's a difference. Now, also, the average man is a lot stronger physically, more overpowering than a woman. So now just think how God arranged this, okay? A man is called to be a protector. He's called to be a defender. So if you have some saber-toothed tiger coming to attack your family, you don't want to be processing those emotions all that efficiently, okay? You want to be a heartless beast, right? So what I'm saying is, the bottom line in all this is, if we know who we are, God created us as an infinitely valuable, one-of-a-kind masterpiece for a mission. And our task is to find that mission and do it. And usually that's lived out through family life or whatever that is. And so, again, it's like God makes us free. It's all about freedom. So when other people are trying to control, oh, that drives me nuts. But it's this invitation to discover who we are. Okay, great. So an unblemished male lamb. And again, I think men were more expendable. You could make more lambs. So also they were set free, but they were pursued until Moses used Aaron's staff to split the Red Sea. They rejected God's plan, but God provided them with manna from heaven. The bread from heaven came down from heaven. The people sinned. Make for us a God in our image. God's plan is rejected, and Moses pleads his case. Okay, after the people create a God in that fits into the world, they grew accustomed to Egypt. In other words, you could take the people out of Egypt, but you couldn't take Egypt out of the people. So they made this God that they could control, that they could carry around. And so Moses up there praying, getting the 10 Commandments, and God is saying, Moses, man, your people down there are making this false God. He says, in fact, why don't you let me just take them out? We'll start over with you. This is a stiff-necked people. Let me just kill them all. And God basically, and Moses says, now God, what would the neighbors think? You go to all this trouble to deliver these people from Egypt and then wipe them out in the desert. That's very bad PR. They're going to think you're not a very nice God. Okay. So that's why Moses is so beloved, because he begged for the people and God showed mercy. Now, the people that sinned, I think, all died in the desert. That's why they wandered for 40 years. But the children and their children were left to live and grow and be there. So the people spread, and when they take refuge to take possession of the land, even after they sinned, God forgave them. They could have gone right in the promised land, but they didn't trust him. So that's when God says, okay, a lot more rules, not just the 10 Commandments. You got all these dietary rules, all this other stuff, and now you're going to wander for 40 years. But he did forgive them. But God also meets all their physical needs. He meets all their physical needs. Okay? When the Israelites settled in the promised land, they set up a system of judges. Okay? And a judge is understood by some as a non-hereditary leader of the people. What's interesting is they had a woman judge. So these people think that women didn't have leadership. Deborah was one of the judges of Israel. So, when the modern feminist thing is, that's all patriarchy. They never respected women. That's just an out and out lie. They don't know history. We're not judged by maleness or femaleness. We're judged by holiness. And if we're holy, God will use that in big and profound ways. And holiness is just being like God. Treating other people like you want to be treated, with compassion, mercy, forgiveness, love, kindness, generosity, all these good things. So from the book of Joshua to Samuel, there's a list of judges. This is from 1200 BC to 1030 BC. And those are the list in the book of Judges. Okay?
Well, why do you think God didn't let Adam go into the promised land?
Moses.
Or not Adam, but Moses.
Well, because he struck a rock. He struck a rock. He broke faith. He lost faith. God said, strike the rock. And he struck it 3 times. He was frustrated. And so, that's what the Bible says. But he still gets to heaven.
Yeah.
You still got to see the promise, and you just didn't get to it.
Right. Yep. And maybe it's because it was a really tough climb. And God said, here, just rest here. I won't make you do this. You can see it. All right. So, and then Samuel, this is in 1 Samuel, Eli and Samuel. Okay. So let's see. Abimelech was not specifically described as a judge there, but you see Deborah, she was one of the judges of Israel. Okay.
Is that where the Gideon Bible comes from, one of the judges? Or?
Well, it's probably, I'm not sure if that's the connection or not. But here's now we have the kings of Israel. This is from Wikipedia, and it's not very big, but you can see this is starts off with Saul, who's the first king of Israel, and then David becomes king, and then Solomon. He has 2 other sons, and then this is where it splits. This is where the kingdom starts to split off with Israel and Judah. Okay, so now you have the divided kingdom. Israel, I think this is the way I remember it. Israel is the northern kingdom. Judah is the southern kingdom. So I comes before J, so north is above south. That's just one of the ways I try and remember it. And this is just a list of kings. Okay. United Kingdom is from 10 BC to 931. The people wanted a king. God tried to talk them out of it, but they refused. God honored their freedom. You know, he said, you're going to have a king, but for a while, it ain't going to go so well. I'm your king, man. They said, oh, we want a king. We want somebody to go to war. We want to win. Okay. God always honors our freedom. He won't make us do anything. But if we want to serve him, he will help us do anything. It's just asking him to help us. The first 3 kings of Israel, Saul between 1030 and 1010, David 1010 to 970, and then, you know, that whole thing with Bathsheba and Uriah. This is, you know, it's like, this is one of the great signs to me that this is the real history of Israel, okay? Because if you're telling a story about your family history, and you got some black sheep back there, somebody who committed adultery and murder, would you want to share that? You probably wouldn't be quick to talk about that, right? So here's David. You know the story?
Not completely, no.
So David, he's out, you know, his people are out fighting, all right?
Oh, yeah.
He's out fighting, and, you know, he's back in the palace, and, you know, high vantage point. He's looking down and sees this beautiful woman on her roof taking a bath, obviously, probably not with clothes on, okay? And so David says, hey, invite her over. King, powerful guy, takes advantage of her, maybe willingly, maybe not, who knows, but she goes back to her house. She's married to one of David's soldiers, and she conceives a child. While the father is out battling away. And if you got a child out of wedlock in Israel, they just kill you. It was a death penalty. I mean, it was a serious crime. And here the king perpetrated the crime. So he sends for Uriah. He says, send Uriah. I want to talk to him. He talks, Uriah, how's the battle going? Fine. Uriah, such a good soldier. Go home, take leave, spend some time with your wife to try and cover his sin. But Uriah says, I wouldn't think of it. All the soldiers are there. They don't have their wives. I'm not going to do that. And David's like, okay, come back tomorrow. So I have a banquet. So David has Uriah come over, gets him drunk, has him drink. So his inhibitions are lower. He says, Uriah, go home. Spend some time with your wife. He doesn't do it. He sleeps it off outside. Then David sends a message with Uriah, sealed, to give it to Jotham, or the head guy. And the message says, put Uriah at the front of the line where the fighting is the fiercest, and then fall back. And he kills him. He murders him. So then Nathan, the prophet, tells this beautiful story, says, Nathan, King David, I have an issue. Maybe you can help me with. He said, there was a man who had this lamb that he loved, this little baby lamb. It was like a daughter to him. And then his neighbor took the lamb and made a meal for it for himself. And David gets mad. He says, oh, that man must die. He's terrible. He's got to pay him back fourfold or twofold or whatever. And says, David, that man is you. You took Uriah's wife, took him as your own. He said, then he repented. And Psalm 51 is traditionally the psalm that David composed in his repentance and his sorrow. Have mercy on me, Lord, a sinner. So the point is, God loves us, even if we make big mistakes. Even if it's just about being sorry, though. We need to be truly sorry for these big sins. So anyways, so that's the Bathsheba and Uriah thing, okay? And then Solomon was, now, the child that they conceived died at birth when it was a baby. And then he took Bathsheba as his wife after Uriah was dead, and it was Solomon was their son. So God, out of that really bad stuff, brought Solomon into their lives and was a very wise king and a good priest, or a good king until.
So Bathsheba and David and together?
Yes, Bathsheba and David is one of his wives.
Okay.
And then Solomon is their son.
Okay.
And Solomon becomes the third king of Egypt, or third king of Israel, rather. So if this wasn't true, why would you put something in this as a story if you're just trying to make up something? I mean, they're trying to relate the truth, and they're not holding back anything. So here's a list of the kings, just kind of a historical, okay, that's nice. I mean, I couldn't come close to listing those or anything, but okay. And then here's a map of Israel, okay? So here you have the kingdom of Israel, which is the northern part, and then the kingdom of Judah, which is the lower part. So this, and Jerusalem is right in the center. But under David and Solomon, it was all united. David was the one that united under Saul. Saul had, and David was the one that brought it all together to establish this. So, I mean, in 1000 BC, Israel was the United States of the world. They were basically the powerhouse in the world, okay? Which is just phenomenal. For this little Jewish tribe to have that kind of power is like miraculous. Okay.
So at that time, Rome was nothing.
Right. Rome was founded in 753 BC.
Oh, so this is
a couple hundred years.
Yeah.
Yep. So Israel is exiled. This is a very important date. 587 BC is known as a Babylonian exile. First temple is destroyed. King Cyrus invites them home, and the temple is rebuilt in 538 BC to 530 BC. And then now we shift from the prophets to sages and scribes. Okay. Hellenism, that just means the Greek influence. Okay, the Greek world became very powerful philosophically. Plato, Aristotle, we're talking, that's like 500 BC, 400 BC. They were an intellectual center. So Hellenism really influenced a lot of things, like the Septuagint. The Bible was translated from Hebrew into Greek because a lot of the education, a lot of the people, a lot of the culture was in the Greek, and that's called Hellenism. Hellenism is just, Helen of Troy, Hellenism. Septuagint is translated about 260 BC. That's not AD. I don't think. No, it'd be BC. Sorry, that's 260 BC, not AD. That's a mistake. I'm going to fix that. Okay, and then the Jews become autonomous, but under the rule of the Roman Empire. Okay, so now they're subject under this Roman Empire. As I said, Rome was founded 753 BC.
What's the Septuagint again?
That's the Septuagint. It means 70. Okay. And they had 70 scholars come together, and they took all the Hebrew scriptures from the Old Testament, translated it from the Hebrew into the Greek, because a lot of people wouldn't know Hebrew, but a lot of people would know Greek. So it was a way for them to bring the Bible to more access to people who knew Greek, because Greek was the predominant language of commercial business. Just like Latin. The reason why the church used Latin is because that was the commercial language of the empire. And so, in fact, the Vulgate, which is the Latin translation for the Bible, it comes from the word vulgar. Okay. What does vulgar mean? We think of bad language, right? But what literally does vulgar mean? It means street talk. It's the language of the people. It's like guttural language. It's just like what the common folks say. Okay, so vulgar is just like, oh, that's vulgar, which is like vulgar. It's like, I'm better than you because that's vulgar. It's like, like a haughtiness type thing. So it doesn't mean curse words necessarily, but it means the common language, the language of the people. In fact, this is one of my favorite stories, Notre Dame. Okay, has anybody seen the Notre Dame Moses statue? Josh, you seen that Notre Dame Moses statue outside the library?
Yes, yeah, I know what you're talking.
Okay. Do you know why he has horns? Did you ever notice that? Never noticed the horns on Moses? You're kidding.
I've never seen the statues.
That's a Saturday instead.
Well, go look at Moses the next time. He's got two big horns. He's got two big horns coming out of his head. Right by the library. It's on the west side of the library. Okay. And Moses got the 10 Commandments. He's like this, and it's got two horns coming out of his head. It's a replica of Michelangelo. Well, in the Vulgate, from the Greek, they translated that Moses had horns of light coming out of his head, where the Greek said he had rays of light coming out of his head. So his, the light radiated from his head, but they said horns of light. And so Michelangelo put horns on him. So it's kind of just a little.
Okay, now, when we're talking about the lineage of, from Saul on down, that they all were eventually Israelis.
Yeah, they were, they.
But now, these Hellenists who are Greek, where was their lineage from?
Well, they're Greeks. So, I mean, they had the power of the culture. They had nothing to do with religion.
No,
They had nothing to do with the Jews.
No, where did they stem from? Because,
Greece.
yeah, okay, they came from Greece. But if the Israelites came from, came from Adam and Eve and down through Saul, and then,
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question, but Genesis does give the lineage, when it goes, if you go and read those genealogies, Genesis does give an account of where the peoples of the world come from.
Okay.
But I haven't looked at it that close.
Okay, because I've had people question it. It's like, well, God created everybody and he created all these people and they were Jewish. He created, Moses and where did the Egyptians come from? Where did the Hellenists come from? And they're asking me these questions. I'm like, I don't know.
Well, I mean, actually, if you read the book of Genesis and it starts to go through the genealogies, you have Ham, Shem. So Shem is one of Noah's sons. And Shem comes from the word Semite. So Shem would be the father of the Jewish people.
Okay.
And some scholars speculate that if you do what's called the biblical narrative and you trace the first 11 chapters of Genesis up until Shem, he lives up until Melchizedek, which is the king of Salem. So people will speculate that Melchizedek was Shem. He lived I think closer to 1,000 years, didn't he? Shem, I don't remember. Well, you have that beautiful, Steve gave us this beautiful book. Is it still over here? Did you leave it here?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, it's got the whole biblical timeline, what we would call the biblical timeline. And after class, maybe we can pull that up if you want. Yeah, that could be. That's great, Steve. I don't remember. So,
True people were living that long, or is that just
well,
a number they chose?
Well, it's hard to know. I mean, the thing is, there's all kinds of people in biblical science who will say that, my own theory is, why do we age? We basically die of radiation poisoning. I mean, the radiation from the sun breaks down our cells' ability to maintain youth. Okay, so I mean, that's my theory. I'm not an expert. I don't know that, but I think basically we die of radiation poisoning. Okay, that's why we age. So that's just my speculation. I'm not That's not my expertise, but I'm just saying, just theoretically, I think that's a plausibility thing. And so maybe at one time, the ozone layer was much thicker. And it may have filtered out a lot more radiation. And we may have lived longer. I don't know.
Have you heard of the hyperbaric chamber?
Yeah, it's a pressure chamber.
Yeah, where they fill it with oxygen. They actually got the idea because they were digging in ice caps and realized that the deep ones, which would be speculation, say before Noah, around Noah, had higher pressure and oxygen. And so it became theorized that it was likely the atmosphere before Noah. And so that's how they even came up with the idea of the hyperbaric chamber. And they've done a lot of studies with it. One, it works for healing a lot of different things. Two, they've even tried growing plants in it, and they produce a lot more fruit, and they're bigger. They grew a tomato plant that was supposed to have little cherry tomatoes. And within 45 days or something, I'm not certain of the days, but something like that, it got to be 4 stories tall, and it had tomatoes on it that were like huge that you like put in your hand. And they ended up moving it to a mall, and because they didn't have anywhere for it to fit, So it's likely that was the atmosphere prior to Noah's Ark, and
So
that could create some differences as well.
But sure.
again, if they did live that long, that's okay. If they didn't live that long, it's okay too, because I'm not, like I said, it doesn't change my faith. I mean, I'm not taking that part of the Bible may be literal, but I'm not going to stake my salvation on it. Okay. Because the Bible has stuff in there that we need for saving truth. So whether or not they lived in exactly those number of years, maybe they did. Maybe they counted years differently. Maybe their calendar was different. Who knows? But
in the case of that Shenandoah, we're talking about, he lived around 530 years. He lived that long, but everybody else that he was around, he lived the natural 70 years or whatever it was.
well, Methuselah, he lived like 900 years, didn't he? Years old as Methuselah. That's where that comes from. He's a biblical character. He lived like 900 years or something.
Yeah, I'm not just referring to Shenandoah.
Right. Yep.
During that period, he supposedly 530 years, but everybody else lived there at the same time, so just lived around a lot.
Yeah. Great. So this is some major Jewish groups. The Sadducees, they were sad, you see, because they didn't believe in the resurrection. Okay. So a way you can keep track of that one. Okay. The Sadducees were sad, you see, because they didn't believe in the resurrection. They believed that you just died. But Pharisees, they believed in the resurrection. They believed in supernatural spirits, angels. The Essenes, that's probably the group that John the Baptist was involved with. Very austere group, may have been connected with John the Baptist. Zealots, very zealous for the faith. And the Sicarii were the dagger bearers. They were the violent terrorists of the day. They were the ones going out stabbing Roman soldiers and stuff. Sicarii is a dagger. So that's what Sicarii means. It's a dagger bearer. So, and then the Messianic Expectations, Judas Maccabeus, a Jewish revolt that led to the rededication of the temple, which is commemorated by the modern Jewish holiday Hanukkah. The oil didn't go out. That's why they have the 12 days or whatever. The oil burned miraculously for those days, even though they don't have oil to replace it. And then also found in the account is an example of praying for those who died, who were less than perfect. Soldiers fighting for Israel died in battle. They were discovered to have an amulet to a false god. Nonetheless, they died. Judas prayed for them and made an expiatory sacrifice for them. So Jesus is our expiatory sacrifice. So in the book of Maccabees, it talks about praying for the dead. And that's where the Catholic tradition comes from. Now, the Maccabees is not a Bible that's found in the Protestants. They took that book out. And that was written about 100 years before Jesus. This is about 100 BC. Interesting salvation history, the fullness of time. We've actually gone probably long enough today, and then we'll start this next week with part 2. I think. I don't know how many more slides I got, but we've gone like an hour and 10 minutes. So any questions at this point? Has this been helpful? Interesting. And guys, don't hesitate to ask questions, okay? Good deal. Keep studying that anthropology.
not
So-
her favorite.
So what's the end game there on anthropology?
She's taking it because she's in nursing. She
Okay,
has to take it for her nursing.
great.
She's not enjoying it.
It's okay, it takes a lot. But I have to learn in a semester, from August to January, I have to try to smash all of them.
Yeah, no, college is, whoever said college was the best years of your life was not a mechanical engineer at Purdue University, I guarantee you. So,
Maybe that was the best, we were who go to college.
Well, let us just ask the Lord to be with us, and may Almighty God bless you all, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thanks, everybody. Any questions, Josh? Everything good?
Oh, good.
All right. So is this interesting? Was it helpful?
Yeah.
Great. All right. Great, man. Have a good night.
Are you having this home safety and all this in creation, how does that either or?